Welcome to episode 23 of the Tiger 700 build project. We're still in stage number 3, the pink stage here, where we're carving the foam as the basis for our plug. In this episode, I'm just going to give you a tour through the 14 days it took me to carve the shape and just let you follow along. So here we go. I'm in the carving process now. As you can see, we're going from square blocks to rounding the edges to full shaping. You can see it's starting to take shape, very, very rough at this point. I've got that theme line that runs from headlight to tail light, and I got pretty much enough foam on there to make that happen. It comes out a little bit further down below, so I carved it out. I don't know if you can see, but it's carved out to about here, and then I went to a flat section. And down here, same thing. I brought it up. It's curved from the bottom, and that green line is about where I stopped carving. So then I basically used that space in between, from the green line at the bottom to about the edge of where the carving was, to make another slab of foam to go on. This time only 1 inch at a time. And that basically gives me my markings for how the piece is shaped. Those are over here. You can see I've got the glue already set up. It's contact glue, waiting for it to happen. The other thing I did to help the carving process is I did put an angle on this one piece, just a really rough angle, because what I'm going to be doing over here is it's going to basically curve out from there. So that's just going to give me a head start on my sanding and rasping to get it to come out to the shape I need. As I'm cutting out the slabs, I'm thinking about keeping the whole car symmetrical. In other words, I want the contour on the right side of the car to look like the left side of the car. So once I have one template cut out, I cut a second one just like it and do both sides kind of at a time. And then to ensure that that lands on the panel in the same place, I measure my lines to make sure that that panel is going to be sitting at the same height on both sides. So for example, I measured both sides and I found out that this side was actually about 1 inch lower than the other side, on the back here anyway. So then I did a correction. I brought this one up 1/2 inch and the other one down 1/2 inch, so they both start on the back at this arrow that's at 24 inches. So they are both aligned. They were exactly the same in the front. But that just helps keep me on the right track to ensure that I don't get a lopsided car. So I started out with a 2-inch slab, then added a 1-inch slab, which got me quite a bit further out, and it's pretty much a gentle curve from there. So this last piece, I'm just using a 1/2 inch slab that I'll be gluing on and carving that, and that should finish out the side. The other thing to be looking for is that on these thinner pieces of foam, these 1/2 inch thickness pieces of foam, they are more susceptible to damage. So the manufacturer puts a clear film on both sides of it, and that's just to help it during shipment to ensure that it's not damaged. You will want to remove that film. It comes off very easily, peels right off. It's just a plastic sheet, but you will want to pull that off or your slab probably won't stick. As I'm carving my body, I keep the original model handy, and I'm using it a lot. I'm referencing back and forth, making sure that I put my panels where I want them to be, where I had already designed for one line to flow into another, and all those things I worked out in clay to ensure that they get transferred to the final car. Here I am on day 2 of the body sculpture. You can see how far I've gotten so far. I'm getting some shape around the midsection. That is starting to come into play, both sides. I have built a small foam armature up front so I can start building the foam out for the nose. Going towards the back. Back is applied. I've done some very rough sanding. I got some blocks here in the back, getting ready to carve those into the tail. Few more of the thick blocks going on there as well. And I'm getting ready to put the little bullet shape behind the roll bar, just setting that up. It's now the end of day 3. You can see it's starting to take shape. I pushed the rear end out a bit. I got a couple other pieces stuck on the tail there that haven't been smoothed down. I worked a fair amount today on the front end. You can see I've got to start at it. Got all that foam up there. I need to carve that down. I've got actually quite a bit left to do in front of the headlight as well. The foam used to carve the body isn't really all that expensive, but it's not cheap either. So you still want to use every square inch of it that you can. So like a lot of projects, what you do is you start with the big slabs. The big slabs, like this piece right here, or the piece right back here is one big slab. Cut those big slabs first and get them on the car. Because once you get those big slabs on, the next step is a slab a little smaller, and then a little smaller, and a little smaller. And those smaller pieces tend to be your scrap, the pieces you cut from those big original slabs. For example, as you look around, the mess I've got in my garage, I told you this is going to be a messy job, but what you don't see are a lot of big chunks laying around. That's because I have taken all those pieces I've cut off and cut smaller pieces out of those, and then usually there's a step after that where I can cut a smaller piece, and sometimes even a third step where I can get even another piece out of it, so all that's left is just little pieces left. A good example here. So this is my stockpile of big slabs. Now, they are cut down because this is as big a piece as I can get into my car. So this is my stash of big slabs yet to use. And then I've got sort of a second stash here of medium-sized slabs. These are the ones I've done some cuts on, but they're still pretty good size. There's lots of places on the car I can use them on. Then as you look around, you see a lot of, like say, small pieces. But for example, I'm working on the front right now, and I showed you how I used the profile to do this piece and then these pieces. Well, there's a lot of pieces in between there that just need to be filled in. Everything you see here, besides that vertical and horizontal profile piece, were just scraps that were laying on the floor. So that used up quite a few of my scraps right there. So, big slabs first, medium-sized slabs, and then go to your really small ones, and you'll use a lot of those big square slabs of foam. It's now the end of day 4. You can see some progress made. I've used some Great Stuff spray foam in between some of the slabs. I was getting some gaps just from, be honest, sloppy cuts. So I'm using that to fill it in for right now. It's now at the end of day 5. You can see I've made quite a bit of progress in the back of the car. All those globules of Great Stuff spray foam have been sanded off, and I'm happy to report that the foam really did work well. The Great Stuff worked great for adhering the foam slabs to the armature plywood underneath. So I don't have a loose rear end. I've got a nice tight rear end. So everything's working good there. It's very solid back there and gives me a solid platform to carve on. And that I did. So you can see I've made quite a bit of progress in shaping the rear end. I've also added the teardrop behind the roll bar. That's rough cut in. End of day 6. Made some good progress today. You'll notice here on the back that I have lightened up the rear end and done some initial shaping there, so it's starting to come in. You can see down here as well, this spot down at the bottom is where the license plate is going to go. So a little bit more foam to add there, just a little bit. Moving around, getting the shaping. So it's starting to look more like it. I've got another couple layers to go on that rear section. It's day 7. I got a fair amount of work done today. It was a bit of a short day. You can see I have rounded out the tail section here a little bit from my original 2-inch slab to my 1-inch slab. I got that all smoothed out today. And I've applied my 1/2-inch slab now, which should be the final layer. That's the same sequence I used up front, a 2, a 1, and a 1/2. So that should be done tomorrow as far as the rough in. Here we are at the end of day 8, made some good progress. You can see I've got some more spray foam on there, great stuff. I have more or less roughed in the rear now. You can see I've smoothed those last couple of panels. I'm just filling in some holes. Day 9. Not much has changed here on the back. That's more or less roughed in. So now I am focusing on the front. As you can see, the front end is beginning to take shape. You can see some of the basic shape there on the nose. And you can see that I've also put in the side pieces as well, getting ready to sculpt those in. Day 10, and you probably won't see much of a change. I started to do the portion right behind the wheel here. I started drawing it out, tried several different shapes, many different shapes, and nothing worked. So I had to go back to my model. This is version 2 of the model. And this is the area that I was having so much trouble with. Looks good on the model. Didn't work on the car at the full scale. So I went back to the drawing board and came up with version 2.1. So this is what it's going to look like now. It comes in much closer to the wheel. In fact, it follows the wheel profile and then it spreads back. The other design change I made was right back here. I changed the outlet for the exhaust from what it was before. To be honest, it looked just a little bit too close to a sphincter. So I've changed it to a teardrop shape, and I think that's going to look much better. Day 11. I'm focusing all my time on the front end now. You can see that my design change from version 2.1 is now on the car. That was this area right here. So that came out and I am happy with it. I have also been working on the front end, getting the contours right. Day 12. I've been focusing on the front and have made some good progress. You can see the valance over the headlights has been roughed in. Almost looks like an eyebrow. And also, I have done a fair amount of work on the front to tone it down, and I have got the sides mostly roughed in. I need to put in some style lines in there, but that will come next. So this new design of the tail section brings the profile up and to a ridge that follows this line. So I needed to add that onto the existing car as well. So the bottom part was already there. I'm adding this ridge, and it's sort of like a wedge piece that would go in that would be very difficult to make out of the foam slabs that I've been using so far, all the pink. So I decided to go with pour foam. So I started off by building a cardboard dam, you might call it, around the edges of the car. It went all the way around the car. And then poured foam in there. This is the 2-part foam that expands. I'll show you to that right over here. This is my mixing station. As you can see, we've got a part A and a part B. You mix the two together. And the way I normally do it is in a Ziploc. You pour the two contents in there, zip it up, squish it around for about a minute or so, and then pour it right away because it starts reacting, getting hot, and expanding. This particular set is formulated to make 2-pound foam, which is a lighter style foam, which is good for carving. All right, so onto the car. Here's the other side, and you can see what I've done here is I've stripped the dam away, the mold that I made around the outside of the car. And you can see the cream colored foam here, how it has seeped down the side. I was hoping it would go down a little deeper because it should actually go down to, about there or so. But I can fill that in. But it actually did a very good job of just a starting place so I can start carving away at it. You can see on this side, I still have the cardboard on there. And one lesson learned on this. The cardboard had a shiny side and a dull side. This shiny side that you see on the outside sometimes. I highly recommend putting the shiny side on the inside because it does a pretty good job of resisting the adhesion that this foam has. So the ones I'd have just plain cardboard against the dull side, it's stuck just like glue because that's what it is. So it came off in many, many, many little pieces. As you can see right here. This is the other side, and all the pieces, looks like a rat's been at it, but that's the only way to get it off. It came off in a bunch of little pieces. I finished the upper portion of the tail as far as a rough end. You can see I'm on day 13 here. Those are work days. You can see there's an initial ledge here where I did one series of pour foam molding and then sanded it down. And then up top I did another layer, basically a second floor, in this area, up here, up in this area. You can see it was a second pour. I've now sanded that down. And what that really did was take that head cone, the cone behind the driver, where maybe a helmet would be, I don't know, and extended it. It was kind of short and stumpy before, and it really didn't go with the rest of the car. So the rear end is starting to look like it goes with the rest. This redesign I did seems to be working. Going back over to my clay model, you can see how this is starting to come in with the two layers I just showed you. The only real area that I have left to do from a rough-end perspective is these two pods on the back here that go between the rear tires and the body. I've got two names for those. Either pantaloons, they kind of look like pantaloons on there, or the bee's knees. You could paint them yellow and they would look just like bee's knees, real bee's knees. But the reason that they're there is to make the rear end look much more planted. It was sort of lifting up in the back and it just didn't look right. It looked kind of funky. So just little pods to help bring the body out to the wheels. I am finally at the end of the foam stage. This has been a long stage. A lot of work to do, but a lot that I learned along the way. I had gone through countless forums, read technical papers, you name it. I tried to learn everything I could about foam body construction, but this was still a learning experience. One of the reasons it took so long is that this is the foundation of the body. And if I miss any key contours or things that are not symmetrical at this point in the game, it could mean a lot of work once I get into fiberglass. Literally 30 seconds of sanding in a particular area could save a day once I'm in fiberglass. So I was really particular and trying to do the very best I could in the foam media. Now there's still some things you can't do in foam, really fine details, and that'll be in the next stage, which is plaster. So let me take you for a little tour. Take you around the front. You can see there's holes in there, and this is my way of marking the center point of the car. So you can see they go right up, and after that it's pretty easy to see. I've got the front wheel wells finished along with the trim pieces. You can see in some of these areas I have actually already started on the initial parts of the next step, which is plastering. Down through the side view, and down. I think this may be the first time you've seen the pantaloons, which were put on each side. And that was to give it a more planted look in the rear with the license plate bracket below.